In one of his many short stories, he says that the library was like a single mind with many tongues. And he describes this situation elegantly by making the observation that to fall in love is to create a religion with a fallible God. And maybe that is, after all, what Dante wanted to tell us through his poem, that there was a kind of love that he longed for and never obtained. Not even in his fictional story, not even when he's the one moving the pen and perpetuating the story. Hello everyone, hi! So today I want to talk about one of my favorite writers of all time, Jorge Luis Borges, and how he was influenced by Dante. I want to talk about their similar ideas on love and also discuss and read to you one of Borges' short stories that he has written about the Divine Comedy that is called Inferno 132. The reason I researched this topic was because I had a course last semester at university that was all about Dante and how he influenced modern writers, artists, filmmakers, and so on. And I had to do a presentation where I chose one of those artists and focus on how they have been influenced by Dante. And I chose Borges because his writing enchants me and I'm so fascinated by the way he thinks. So whenever I get to choose my own topic about something I have to work on for university, it often has something to do with Borges. In case you're new here, hello, my name is Maria. I study comparative literature at the University of Vienna, and I document my journey of studying and loving literature and languages here on this channel. Last semester, I spent a semester abroad in Paris, which is also where I had that course about Dante. And if you're enjoying these videos, I would be so happy if you would consider supporting the channel. I always link my Ko-fi account in the description box below. And yes, I am sitting on a swing, which was a somewhat unexpected thing to happen. But I love it. Maybe I could do like a dramatic welcome to the video. And I think I'll practice because I can almost reach the actual books to like dramatically grab out a book when I talk about it in one of my videos. Oh my god, I just threw so much stuff down. Okay, let's get into the video. So, Jorge Luis Borges was born in 1899 in Buenos Aires and is considered to be the national poet of Argentina. He was a writer, poet, literary critic, and essayist, and Dante is just one of the many writers that have influenced Borges because he was very well read, way beyond language or national borders. He is one of the most important figures in 20th century literature and often considered to be the most important Spanish-speaking author since Cervantes, even though he himself would disagree. Borges always manages to mix fiction with his philosophical and essayistic reflections, and they usually resolve around the topic of not knowing. Borges' work is full of references to other works of literature and authors, and if you're interested at all to get into Borges, I would recommend you get his short story collection Fictions, you can see it in the back on my shelf there, to start. But don't be fooled by the short stories or the thin book. It's gonna take you a long time. At least that's what it was like for me to grasp the depth of the ideas that he's suggesting. Borges thinks that the being of literature is literature itself. So it's not that literature feeds on reality, but that a book is made out of other books. In one of his many short stories, he says that the library was like a single mind with many tongues. So for Borges, literature is a universe. And like all universes, the universe of literature overflows in space and time and is infinite. Borges further emphasizes that reading and writing are activities that are linked, which of course is the case, but he says that in order for us to even read Dante today, it was necessary not only for Dante to write the Divine Comedy, but also that people throughout the ages kept reading and commenting on the Divine Comedy in order for us to still have it available, which is such a basic idea. If you think about it, it's like, yeah, of course, but it kind of blew my mind when I thought about it for the first time. It is like works of literature need to kept up like a balloon that is not allowed to drop on the floor, because once it does, it will just leave the scene and it's very unlikely that it will actually come back into fashion to read it. Now, I couldn't possibly reference all the allusions to Dante in Borges' work, because the Divine Comedy was, according to Borges, the most important book that was ever written. It was open on his desk at all times, and he apparently wanted to learn Italian by reading the Divine Comedy. Borges published a book of essays with 9 essays about Dante. It's called 9 Dantesque Essays. 9 essays dedicated to Dante, just like the 9 circles of hell and the 9 spheres of paradise in Dante's work. And in one of his 9 essays, he focuses on the scene where Dante finally sees Beatrice again. In a way, this scene is very important because, Dante in the Divine Comedy makes his way all through the Inferno and the Purgatorio to just meet Beatrice again, right? That's the whole point of the journey. And Dante focuses on that moment when they finally see each other again. Now, as a reminder, Beatrice was an actual person in the actual life of the actual Dante. She was a young woman who Dante adored, even though he never really spoke with her or was in a relationship with her. I think he only saw her twice, and he dedicated the entire poem of the Divine Comedy to her. And in the Divine Comedy, Dante places Beatrice not only in paradise, but also next to the Virgin Mary. So obviously a very important place. The entire reward for his journey is to see her again, even though, again, the actual Beatrice in his life never did anything special to deserve that. So when in his fictional journey he finally arrives at the end of the Purgatorio, Beatrice is there to wait for him, and she becomes his guide. Beatrice is his poetic muse, a guide through paradise, an ideal in a way, and she is described with powerful poetic language. But she is not a warm and loving presence. That's the weird thing about the scene. On the contrary, she is cold and somewhat detached from human emotions right when he sees her. So just as in real life, Dante doesn't receive love from Beatrice. Not the warm, kind and passionate love human beings usually yearn for. And Borges, in his essay, senses this desperate love that Dante has for Beatrice, and he describes this situation elegantly by making the observation that to fall in love is to create a religion with a fallible God. Because when we feel something as powerful as love, we put that person on a pedestal. We begin to idolize the beloved so much that it is in a way like we're creating our own religion. And maybe that is, after all, what Dante wanted to tell us through his poem, that there was a kind of love that he longed for and never obtained, not even in his fictional story, not even when he's the one moving the pen and perpetuating the story. And it seemed like even though Beatrice was his muse, he could never really detach from the actual Beatrice that he met in his life. She remained to him a distant, inaccessible being, concerned with his salvation, but not really with his emotions and desires. And now let's move on to Borges' short story on Dante. So up until now we talked about an essay. There's an actual short story that is called Inferno 132. It's a very short story. I'll read it to you in a moment. And the title already refers to a single line in the first canto of the Divine Comedy. So let's read the beginning of the Divine Comedy together. I have here the Hollander translation. It's by Robert Hollander and Jean Hollander, which I think is fantastic and I love it. And I love this edition because it has the Italian on the left and the English on the right. So as you most probably know, the Divine Comedy starts with, midway in the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost. So essentially, in the first canto, we learn that Dante has lost his direction in life. But to learn more about Borges' short story, we have to read line 32, right? Thanks to the title, it's very easy to find. Inferno 1:32. Okay, I'll read you line 29 till 36. After I rested my wearied flesh a while, and I took my way again along the desert slope, my firm foot always lower than the other. But now, near the beginning of the steep, a leopard light and swift, and covered with a spotted pelt, refused to back away from me, but so impeded, barred the way, that many times I turned to go back down. So line 32 is about a leopard. The leopard is central here. And when we take a closer look at the symbolism of a leopard, many have interpreted the leopard to be a symbol of sensual love, a powerful and distracting love whose beauty is almost devouring. But this interpretation is not so important to Borges. And here's another thing about the leopard. If you speak Italian, please tell me. But my teacher, when I had this course, and she is Italian, said that this is actually a translation mistake, that the Italian word that is always translated to leopard actually means something like a lynx. And she said herself, like, we discovered that together, and she said it's so weird because in every translation she has ever seen into every language, it is actually translated as a leopard. So yeah, maybe the exact animal isn't important. What's more important is that in Borges' short story about this leopard, Borges depicts man as an animal. And he says that we humans know no more about the world than a leopard does. Yet, according to Borges, it is easier to close our eyes and ignore this fact other than actually face it. So in this short story, we have a leopard who is held in captivity, and he has a dream one night where God appears and reveals to the leopard the meaning of his existence. God tells him, "You live and you will die in this prison, so that a man I know of may see you a certain number of times and not forget you, and place your figure and symbol in a poem which has its precise place in the scheme of the universe." And the poem God is talking about, that is a part of the scheme of the universe, is of course the Divine Comedy. We could say it's a little bit of a strange story that a leopard was only born so that Dante can see him and that he can be in this poem forever. In the first canto, on the first pages, in all of our apparently wrong translations. But if we look a bit closer, it throws up the question of why things exist in literature and in life in general. In an interview, Borges was actually asked about his idea of God and whether he would accept a God, not as a personal God, but as a concept of truth and ethics. And Borges answered, "What about truth? I don't know. It would be very strange for us to be able to understand it." In one of my short stories, I speak about how a leopard was brought to Florence in Dante's time, and that Dante, like any citizen of Florence, must have seen that leopard, and so he put a leopard into the first canto of the Inferno. In my story, Inferno 1:32, I imagine that in a dream the leopard is told it had been created, so Dante can see it and use it in his poem. The leopard understands that in the dream, but when he awakens, naturally, how could he understand that he exists only so a man could write a poem and use him in it? So that is what actually happens in the short story. Once the leopard wakes up, he cannot process his revelation. For, quote, the machinery of the world is much too complex for the simplicity of a beast. And for Borges, as you'll see, because I'm going to read you the short story in a moment, the soul was not exclusive to man or animals. In his story, he describes the universe as a fabric that has a complex and precise order in which all things are intimately linked with one another, no matter how small. And even if we gain some knowledge or a lot of knowledge or speak directly to God and He reveals to us the purpose of our existence in a dream, if we wake up, it is too complex and incomprehensible to understand. So the question for Borges in this short story, I believe, is not what is truth, but can we even understand it if we would know it? So I'll end this video by reading you the actual short story. It's just one page. Inferno 1:32. From the twilight of day till the twilight of evening, a leopard in the last years of the 13th century would see some wooden planks, some vertical iron bars, men and women who changed, a wall and perhaps a stone gutter filled with dry leaves. He did not know, could not know, that he longed for love and cruelty and the hot pleasure of tearing things to pieces, and the wind carrying the scent of a deer. But something suffocated and rebelled within him, and God spoke to him in a dream. You live and you will die in this prison, so that a man I know of may see you a certain number of times, and not forget you, and place your figure and symbol in a poem which has its precise place in the scheme of the universe. You suffer captivity, but you will have given a word to the poem. God, in the dream, illuminated the animal's brutishness, and the animal understood these reasons and accepted his destiny. But when he awoke, there was in him only an obscure resignation, a valorous ignorance, for the machinery of the world is much too complex for the simplicity of a beast. Years later, Dante was dying in Ravenna, as unjustified and as lonely as any other man. In a dream, God declared to him the secret purpose of his life and work. Dante, in wonderment, knew at last who and what he was, and blessed the bitterness of his life. Tradition relates that, upon waking, he felt that he had received and lost an infinite thing, something he would not be able to recuperate or even glimpse, for the machinery of the world is much too complex for the simplicity of men. I will end this video with a quote that I think would have resonated with both authors, and that is by Georges Bataille, who said, "I believe truth has only one face, that of a violent contradiction." Thank you for listening.